Hello and welcome to the Acclaim It Knowledge Network webinar series. Today's webinar is Reshaping Your Workplace for Wellness, Safety, and Productivity. I'm Bill Skoranek, Senior Director of Marketing, and today Jed Levenstein of Wurkwel will discuss the concerns expressed from businesses considering workplace reentry and share some insightful best practices to minimize risk and promote safety and social responsibility. After the presentation, we'll open up the webinar for questions and answers. You can ask a question at any time by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of the webinar window, and we'll try to get to every question in the allotted time. We'll also be providing a recorded version of this webinar on our website, and an email will be sent to you with the link to access it. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Jed.
Thank you very much, Bill. Much appreciated. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well at the comfort of potentially their own home or in the office setting. And if you're in the office setting, well, I'll explain today some practices that I hope your employers or yourselves are looking into to make sure that those in the office setting are feeling comfortable, confident, and just as productive as they were pre this pandemic territory that we are currently finding ourselves in. Here, as you can see from the graphic and as Bill introduced, my name is Jed Levenstein and I'm the Vice President of Wurkwel Ventures. I really want to very much thank Bill Skoranek, Gary Pierce, as well as Mike Schultz for the opportunity to present and talk with all of you today regarding this extremely important topic around that we're all dealing with today, around reshaping your workplace, as well as for wellness, safety, and productivity as a whole. So before we get into really the meat and potatoes of what I want to discuss, I just want to make sure you guys all understand, why we are being provided this platform from Acclaim It to discuss with you some suggestions, some practices to make sure that you are mitigating risks amongst employees when they're entering the workplace at this time. So as you can see from this slide, we're talking about Wurkwel as well as the portfolio companies. Wurkwel is a holding company that consists of a portfolio of companies all dealing with clients in transition. So whether a client is expanding, relocating, or contracting, we work very closely with the clients to ensure that we could help them with procuring furniture. At Right Size Facility, it's new furniture. At Office Furniture Center, it's pre-owned or remanufactured furniture. And within Mac Relocations, we work with clients to understand how we could work with them for installation services, whether it's furniture or other FF&E, as well as moving and delivery services. And last but not least, unfortunately at this time, which has become a little bit more busy, is the decommissioning and asset disposition services. So with that, and with the experience of dealing with these clients in transition, we also have a very strong understanding and a pulse to the ground of what is being heard and talked about outside in the work regarding the workplace during this climate. And really the truth of the matter is this. We talk with a lot of different people and we try to get the expert opinion by aggregating all of this information. And that's what we're looking forward to really explaining and discussing during today's presentation. So the vision of Wurkwel, and it really plays well into what we're going to discuss today, is to create a better workplace environment for today's workers, regardless of budget. And let me repeat that last part, regardless of budget. Because the truth of the matter is, especially when we're dealing with the pandemic as we are today, it's all about employee safety, confidence, and in the end, to equate to productivity. And we want to make sure that all input is being heard. And regardless of the cost that may be needed to ensure that the input is being executed upon, we need to make sure that we are putting forth the effort to think through, as well as put the products, whether it's screen dividers, reconfigurations, or further retrofits, to ensure that not only, again, are these employees confident, but they're excited to come back to the workplace. And they want that change of environment from where they've been the last 5+ months. As we know, workers will not return to the same office space they left. So let's get into it and discuss what they will return to. Now, as I mentioned in the prior slide, what we're trying to do here with our posts on the ground as to who we work with at Wurkwel Ventures, as well as our operating companies, whether it's government officials, healthcare workers, scientists, building engineers, commercial real estate analysts, workplace furnishing and interior design specialists, and many more, including the A&D community. We are very much aggregating this information, performing our own research to make sure that we can get this siloed experts on the different cases of the workplace environment to come to fruition. Because as you see on the top of the slide, there are no experts on a post-pandemic world, but there are experts that we seek answers from, relevant to their area of expertise. So with that being said, we wanted to, again, break into the different silos to understand how we could really ensure that all employers and clients that we work with understand the different feedback that we're receiving and how we could work with them to ensure it is being executed upon in the office space. So as we get into this, we also want to explain what are some of these experts that we're talking about saying. So starting with the commercial real estate side, what are they talking about? What are they thinking? So as you see on the top left, Cushman & Wakefield. Cushman & Wakefield has actually been very innovative, very proactive in their measures around dealing with the pandemic. As you see, they created a 300-page manual on safely reopening offices. It is something that you guys can all find readily available on the internet. And it's very interesting about how they really put forth the effort in a very short time once the pandemic hit to ensure that they were thinking through all aspects of what the office environment should look like. Cushman & Wakefield was very much also at the really cusp when this all started around the 6-foot office design. You could see an office video in their Amsterdam office on YouTube, really, and it's very interesting. So I recommend that you all check it out. It's talking about the 6-foot office. And the video very much explains the different ways that they're going about this, whether it's directed arrows to go in and out so employees are not walking by each other, whether it's the mats that you see on the image on the bottom left to ensure that no colleague could walk in within that circle because that's violating their 6-foot space. So I would really recommend to go in and look at the Cushman & Wakefield research, but more excitingly, look at their YouTube video around 6-foot office, because I think it speaks volumes about some of the precautionary measures that they put in place, not only advising their clients, but them in their offices themselves. There's also Colliers. And Colliers is interesting because, they have two things that they're really talking about here: the business continuity and preparedness, as well as the well-being of employees. So let's go back to the first topic, business continuity and preparedness. What are they thinking about? They're talking about how do businesses operate effectively, working remotely or in split operations, and preparation to negate future disruptions. Many, offices currently are working in staggered schedules. And that's, of course, what means split operations. And these staggered schedules could be via departments or via individuals based on, flexibility that perhaps may be needed due to family situations or the ability to be in the workplace to collaborate with somebody that they may need to work with in a closer, probably more physical type of environment. The well-being of employees. How are businesses taking measures to keep employees safe, healthy, and productive? Well, isn't that the million-dollar question? So we could further get into it as we move forward here. Now, this is one of my favorite kind of slides that we've seen since the beginning of the pandemic, because it really speaks volumes to the journey. It's like the 7 stages of grief: shock, realization, response, a culture-fitting resilience plan for the future, reimagination, implementation, and flourish. So let me back up here. As you see on the first 3, shock, realization, and respond. Well, that's right when the pandemic hit. And what is everyone thinking? Well, first, people are in paralysis almost. They're thinking, what do we do now? This can't be happening. We're gonna go back to the workplace. But it's not that easy, as we all understand. That's when the realization comes in. What is the impact? What are the dynamics moving forward? And what should our response be? And during this period, it's all about workplace continuity. Because as you are all aware, as I'm sure you all experienced, you had individuals at different times stating, we cannot come into the workplace. And then it came to the point where the employer themselves said, we're all going to be working from home. And that's how you have to learn in that initial stage, how to scale that remote work program, how to ensure there's strong communication and governance over, truth be told, production, and making sure that they're doing what they're there to do as if they were in the office place. And then, of course, short-term, intermediary term, as well as long-term scenario planning. That's when, after you get through those stages, you really get to the productivity challenge. How do you make sure that productivity not only maintains, but can be improved? How are you planning for that future? And this is that bridge from the first experiences that you're going to establish all the way into, all right, we understand what we're dealing with now. Now it's time to move forward and think about the future of the workplace. And truth be told, that's where Wurkwel and our companies come into play. And we're very experienced in the last 6 months of advising clients about the reimagination efforts. What is that future vision? Again, not only short-term, but long-term, as to what are they imagining that workplace of the future to be. After the reimagination stage, there's of course an implementation stage. Let's implement what the input was provided about new designs for the workplace. Maybe we want more open space, maybe more closed space. We'll get into that in a minute here, don't worry. But we want to make sure that that is all being thought very much through. We also want to talk about the retrofitting. Are you thinking about inputting or implementing grass dividing screens within the conference rooms? Are you thinking about removing a certain number of chairs from a conference room to ensure that you could utilize the social distancing norm that we now call today? And last but not least, the flourishing. This is the point where everything's been implemented and you're back to the workplace. The employees are all back in full force and everybody is feeding off each other's energy and they're nurturing, cultivating, further thriving within the new workplace environment. So what this is all about is understanding the 7 steps. And just like any tough situations in life, there are steps to get through each process. And what I love about this slide is it very much boils down each and every emotion, as well as what should be taking place, not only from a personal perspective, but thinking about your employees, as well as the office space down the road. So we spoke a little bit about what we're hearing from the experts in those siloed specific areas of building services. But what are we hearing from clients? What are they asking about? What are we talking to them about and consulting them about? As you can imagine, Wurkwel and our operating companies have been very busy over the last 6+ months, obviously working on the core business, but more so than anything, picking up the phone and making sure that the clients out there, whether they're past clients or prospective clients, understand what we're all dealing with and what they should be thinking about in an advisory type of perspective. And what are some of those things and topics that we're discussing? Workforce re-entry strategies, facility and building reopening protocols, workplace and common area adjustments for social distancing, a re-entry program management procedure and protocols. We'll get into that, which we have a strong 5-step plan that we would advise every company to go through. A training workforce and or staff on re-entry expectations. There are going to be new expectations in this new normal. We want to make sure that people are adhering to them, and especially the employers. And we also are talking with our clients about building confidence within individuals on health and safety. Not only building confidence so they are knowledgeable, but building confidence so that they have the ability to speak up and make sure that those protocols are in place. Another aspect that we're hearing from clients, the reimagination of space and a way of working. And we could talk about that for a long while, but we do have some suggestions because we think that there's proactive measures that can be taken to make sure, again, that we are all working proactively and precautiously to make sure that we're combating the current unprecedented times of today. So I mentioned this new normal, and you hear this all the time, the new normal. But the truth is, it doesn't have to be scary. It could be accepted. And once it's accepted, like anything in life, we understand how to strategize, work within these new protocols, and then we can thrive, like you saw on that life cycle chart. What Right Size Facility has done, one of the operating companies within Wurkwel, is we have created a return to work playbook. This is easily downloadable on our website, but we're also going to be able to share this presentation, which I think will share many tips. As you see on this slide, one of the most crucial elements regarding the changes to the workplace after COVID-19 involves, of course, how the traditional office space itself will function. After the overwhelming trend of workplaces incorporating open floor plans, a lot of offices, as we've discussed, will need to redesign, retrofit, and reconfigure to promote safety, wellness, and productivity in the workspace. So what does redesign, retrofit, and reconfigure really mean? So let's get into that, because as I said, Wurkwel's been talking a lot about advisory, consulting, and it all starts with understanding what is the current space plan of a client, and how do we work with that client to understand if changes need to be made and where those changes need to be made. So we start with the redesigning aspect. What does the floor plan look like today? And through different technology platforms out there, such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and our own one that we have within Right Size Facility, we're able to work with clients to enable remote space planning, see what, again, their space is today, and how we can create different plans for not only the immediate, but ongoing long-term process for clients to adapt to what the new normal really is. But after the redesign, it also comes into retrofitting, because that is part of this new space planning process. It's ensuring that not only are we making sure that things are spread apart, but if they can't be, such as workstations, that we're creating the proper mobile screens, dividers, partitions, other informational signage to ensure that we're creating policies that are visible and transparent for all to see, including visitors, that we're really implementing what we wanted to put forth in the redesign in the retrofitting category. With a lot of abilities to work with different manufacturers on our side, we've seen everything. And we really stress that it's not just a new fad that's going to be put in place, but it's something that really should be thought about the long term in making sure that every measure is being put in place for employees to feel and be confident that they are being treated with the utmost respect and care by seeing that their employer is putting in place these different norms within products that are making sure that the germs are not spread. And then last but not least in this whole process, after the redesign, retrofit, is the reconfiguring. Let's put this all in action. Let's execute on what we've discussed. Let's make sure that everything is put in place and we can return to work. And that could be the new normal. So there's many different stages of return to work as we've been discussing, right? There's the immediate planning. There's basically the intermediary, medium-term planning, and then there's really the long-term, proactive, ongoing planning. But what I think is very important is the immediate planning that you see on this slide today. Because what you understand is the before has rapidly changed. And when I say rapidly changed, you can see from the before model versus the after inspiration model of 1 as well as 2, all of the many differences that we've suggested that we have absolutely seen taking place, not only amongst our clients, but amongst many of these employers out there in the workspace today. As you see in Inspiration 1, against the before picture, in Inspiration 1, we removed a middle station and replaced it with a freestanding screen, right? We also replaced the center upholstered spine screens with higher, cleanable glass screens. You want to make sure that anything that we input from a product standpoint, FF&E standpoint, is extremely easy to clean. And that's why you're even seeing laminated surfaces coming back into the fold, because it's easy to clean. You want to make sure that there's added acrylic territory screens to the outer side of each station. Again, it's all about limiting germs and thinking through each and every different type of situation. You also want to, of course, change the orientation of their files to the opposite side, so people are not sitting directly across from each other, even if there is a glass screen. What about the situation where somebody stands up from their chair? You want to make sure everything is being very, very safely guarded and that your employees know everything has been thought through. An Inspiration Plan 2, what you'll see, is a little different, but it also works. We turn the workstations, again, so they are not facing each other. Now, this is if the room allows. If the room doesn't allow, this is where the space planning and the redesign very much comes into play to make sure that we can provide an executed plan, such as Inspiration 2. We replaced the center upholstered screens with higher whiteboard screens. What we're seeing with the screens is that they're getting raised. It used to be around 54 or 56-inch screens. Now we're seeing them as high as 66, if not 70 inches. Again, it's about the blockage of germs being spread in all situations, including if someone stands up or if someone's walking around the office space. In Inspiration 2, we also added side-mounted screens to the front of each workstation with cleanable vinyl upholstery. Again, very similar, as you see, to number 3 on Inspiration Plan 1. We also added the whiteboard territory screens to the outer side of each station, as well as added freestanding screens to the back stations if the benching pack, as you see, is not placed against a wall. A wall serves as a barrier, but if there's something else needed, this is where these backstations very much come into play. So the immediate changes we talked about with a lot of visuals, because this is what we're implementing with our clientele. Then when we get into the short-term changes, this is where we get into advisory, and not only talking about space planning, FF&E, but really talking about the workspace as a whole. What are the employment practices very necessary for the return to the workplace? So in the short term, I want to make sure everyone's thinking about touch-free sanitization, easy access to disinfectant wipes and masks. I know in our office, we have sanitization stations. We have masks readily available for everybody. And we also, of course, have wipes in every office in our workplace at this time. We also suggest frequent sterilization and cleaning of spaces, at least daily. I would recommend at least once in the morning and at least once at the afternoon, and then you could have the cleaning service come in at the end of the day. We have a cleaning service that comes in every single night. They always have, but it's now been a very much furthered service with more deep cleaning services that we have recommended. And we pointed out some of the nooks and crannies that we think may have been left out in the past to ensure, again, everything is being looked at, cleaned, and sanitized. There's also the ability to really make sure the HVAC optimization is at the fullest, and that you are looking at and talking to your building about cleaning the filters. You could put all these measures into place that we've discussed and will continue to discuss. But I will tell you, and this is something that's come up, HVAC is very easy to help spread the germs by pushing the air from one place to the next. So it is very important that if you are within an office space suite, that you talk to your building and understand the protocols they are putting in place for the HVAC optimization. If you have your own standalone building, it's very important to talk to your facility manager. It's very important to look at who is that point person that's working on that situation to ensure everything is being thought through, optimized, filtered, and cleaned within the HVAC. I mentioned earlier, phasing of return to work in terms of staggering shifts, making sure that you match up different departments, maybe having departments that collaborate more together in the office 2.5 days a week or 3 days a week, and the other 2 days a week. It's extremely important, though, to get people a sense of camaraderie, a sense of understanding that the workplace is not gone forever. And so it's easy for them to forget about coming to the office, but having them come in creates that ability for them to know, hey, we're in this together, and there is going to be the workspace that's going to be here. We should come in, and it will gradually get them more familiar with coming back to the office space when that normalcy does arrive. We've discussed this, but the use of remote work has been obviously added, and more flexibility has been provided for employees. Based on the virtual meeting technology, that's a great plus. I still don't think the workplace is going anywhere, but it may take time for everyone to return to where it was at and the levels it was. Informational and directional signage throughout public and private spaces. In our own offices, I should say, we have arrows everywhere. And this is, again, like I said within the Cushman slide, having these directional arrows will ensure that employees are not walking right alongside each other, but at least maintain that 6-foot distance. Temperature stations and screening of employees upon arrival. Again, this is extremely important. We have thermometers at every one of our offices, and we ensure that everyone is taking their temperature. The last thing anybody wants is to ensure that is to have this spread when it could easily be solved with some precautionary measures. In the last slide, I talked about implementation of workstation screens, space dividers, and I'll throw in a new word here, the implementation of biophilia. If you guys are wondering what that is, I could get into that in a little bit. Don't worry. As well as the reconfiguration of furniture to separate and realign, as we discussed in the previous slide. Now, the return to work proactive changes. The truth of the matter is, these are changes that we think are going to be ongoing needs. And we think this is not only for the short term, the intermediary term, but the long term as well. And these proactive suggestions are ones that I would, again, recommend you look into and see if they can be executed upon. Completing an A&D based on distancing. Installation and use of lighting, such as UV lighting that kills bacteria. A shift in finish standards for the FF&E to include solid surfaces, bleach cleanable fabrics, antimicrobial wall finishes, and non-porous materials. Keep in mind, all FF&E, we want to make sure it's easy to clean, sanitized, and we want to make sure that if anybody's coming into the office, they know that fully well. We also want to suggest the widespread implementation of motion sensors, touch-free fixtures, auto open doors, and new technological innovations. I've seen a lot in the last 6 months in terms of the innovations to combat germs. I've seen hand sanitizer stations placed above door handles that are automated, and every minute it sprays out disinfectants. I've seen much more implemented, hand towel dispensers that are all motion censored. Now, this is something that's been going on for years, of course, but what I'm talking about is the mass volume changes I've seen in the last 6 months based on this pandemic, and something that will never go away. I also suggest the possible scaling back of open workspaces in favor of dedicated workstations and return of the cubicle and private office. As you can see, I am thinking it's going to revert a little bit more back to the traditional office space versus the new modern open bullpen type of office space to limit congregating of spaces, or as well as to limit these open spaces where germs can easily be spread. Last but not least, on this slide, you see increase the space allotted per individual from 150 square feet per individual to 225 or even 250 square feet. And this actually goes into another topic in terms of what's going to happen in the commercial real estate market from a square footage perspective. And you have two different kind of thoughts. One is, hey, it's going to maintain, or even potentially companies are going to need more square footage to allow for the distancing needed. Others are saying, hey, it's going to very much reduce because we're going to very much stick with kind of staggered schedules, and we're going to need less space. Now, that's still to be seen, because what I'm hearing from the brokerage firms that we work with so closely is they're seeing the maintaining or the additional square footage because the employers have a strong sense of wanting to return to the workplace. It's not a matter of when, because that's still uncharted. It's still unknown, but it's a matter of we need to get it done. So we need to plan it forward to when this does happen. So at this slide of employee reboarding, a 5-step risk management plan, I think it's extremely important to review each of these 5 measures because I would strongly suggest each and every company goes through these 5 stages before even welcoming back the employees to their workplace. Number 1, form a new reboarding team. As we re-enter the workplace, we really need to educate our employees on health and safety. And we can do so by creating a real comprised team of HR and communications leadership and others whose voices want to be heard to make sure that everybody is not only being heard, but it has a part in making sure that the workplace is safe. Number 2, develop communication protocols. Your company really must be able to communicate clearly to all employees, as well as across executive leadership, the various stages of reboarding and where everyone stands. You need to know who are your key stakeholders, communicators. Who are you needing to reach out to ensure that the word is getting spread amongst the organization? And who are you reaching out to ensure not only is the word getting spread out, but everything is being adhered to from a protocol and procedure standpoint as needed. Number 3, listen to your employees. Well, number 1 would be void if you're not going to plan to listen to your employees. It's extremely important to gauge everybody's input. Listen to the employees. Send out a survey. Have them have a conference call. Have a virtual meeting. Understand what are the potential questions, concerns, and make sure that when you are listening, or when they are talking, you are listening, and that you are letting them know that you are not only listening, but you want to move forward and figure out how you can really, again, execute on some of these plans. Number 4, prepare the physical workplace to be welcoming but safe. We've talked about this a lot already. Again, whether it's desk dividers, wellness screens, signage, we need to make sure that everyone is utilizing all of the resources, whether it's talking with companies like Wurkwel and our operating companies, performing research on the web. It's extremely important to get your resources to research and make sure that it's communicated back to the team and put into place. Last but not least, number 5, measure and rebuild. It's true, measure can often be prepared and adapted quickly. And we want to make sure that we foster a culture of curiosity and well-being in a very quick manner. We don't have time to wait. This is something that's imperative, that we understand the topics that are pressing today and that we work fast. We communicate amongst our company. We communicate amongst those out there that can help us to measure what that response is and rebuild quick, as well as being responsive. So as we're talking about the pandemic and obviously a lot of new initiatives that will come forward, based on the current situation, I'd like to kind of discuss some new initiatives for the new normal that we're dealing with over at Wurkwel that I believe is also widespread across not only the commercial building services industry, but widespread across based on being on the thought of everybody's mind out there, no matter what industry they're in. So there's a co-create initiative that we put forth, and it talks a little bit more about redesign, retrofit, and reconfigure. With the ability of virtual conferencing technology as it is today, it is simple to work in any type of environment, whether you're at home or at the office, to work with a company, such as Right Size Facility, to present your space, your floor plan. Let us take a look. Let us see what we could provide from a free consultation, and let us tell you some ideas that we would, suggest. Whether it is clearing space, reverting back to some private offices, adding the dividers, let us help you. This also allows us to collaborate, not only with the point person that's taking over the project, but with all of their employees within the company. What are their concerns? And let's hear it directly from them so we can ensure that they are being sufficed as well. And within all that, you have the ability to receive a complimentary floor plan design that provides all of these suggestions, as well as what are the next steps, the next action items. Now, there's also the ability within all industries to think about the now. And with the pandemic coming in, what are we doing to be agile? And one of the things within the Wurkwel family of companies we've been doing is really working within healthcare. And within working with healthcare, not only have we done some great projects that we're very proud of to cater to what this ongoing pandemic, such as working within temporary hospitals, temporary facilities, such as McCormick, as well as setting up Mayor Lightfoot's office within the facility. But it's also given us the purview to really understand and listen how the healthcare industry is dealing with the pandemic and putting that information forth so we can consult with you as employers to pass that message down to the employees. There's of course the need for the employers to understand how their employees are working from home. Do they feel that they have a proper workplace set up at home? I know we're talking about the workplace environment, but keep in mind for the last 5+ months and moving forward for many, that new workplace environment is the home. So are they having ergonomic chairs to sit in so they're not getting bad backs? Do they have a proper desk setup so they're not getting carpal tunnel syndrome? And the truth of the matter is, I'm not exaggerating. In the past 5 months, we've heard more than enough cases to say people need to act quickly and understand that they need a workplace setup that's going to be not only convenient, but help them to be as productive as they would at the workplace. So we do offer at Wurkwel a work from home voucher program. You'll see many of those out there. And it is important for employers to look into different items like these to ensure that there's, again, a proper workplace setup, that there's monitor arms so you're not hurting your neck, sit-stand desks so you're not hurting your back and you can get the proper standing time as necessary, as well as the chairs to provide that ergonomic setting so, again, you're not hurting your back in that regard. The work from home voucher program is something that's been of very much interest, as you can imagine, with a lot of clients working from home. And this is something that we've been very proud of, to work very quickly and adapt to make sure that those needs are taken care of with our expertise in creating the strong products that will suffice at the home office, which is so very important in this day and age. So I really appreciate all of your time today. Obviously, there's a lot of information to digest. And with that, as I mentioned earlier, we will be sure to make sure that this presentation is shared so for everyone who can take a further look, as well as some links that are downloadable or just viewing pleasure for your viewing pleasure, so you could get more information about each and every one of these pieces of information, initiatives, and just procedures and protocols that are suggested before opening up the workplace for full reentry. Thank you very much for your time. I'd love to take any questions.
Thank you, Jed. And as you said, let's open it up to questions right now. As a reminder, you can ask a question by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of the webinar window. And we do have our first question. I manage risk for my company. A different department manages facilities. Sometimes we don't see eye to eye, and I'm worried that they are more concerned about their budget than the safety of our people. What are the few things I should be most concerned about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, all too often you hear about the different battles in their companies around different positions. And truth be told, facility managers and risk managers are one of those that I'm talking about because they have the best interests of employees in mind. So I want to get that straight and out there. But they also have different objectives within their day-to-day jobs. So the truth of the matter is, these are two individuals, these are two roles that really need to collaborate and get on that same page. And this very much goes back to the slide where I talk about the 5-step onboarding plan. These are two individuals that need to be on that same page and need to be part of the key stakeholders that are taking part in these initial discussions. So what I would really very much recommend is that these two individuals understand how important they are to getting on the same page. But in the end, what should they be most concerned about? Employee confidence. And again, it goes back to that same slide. Listening, understanding the input from the employees, and making sure that the top 5 items, top 10 items, the benchmarks are going to be different from each company based on their ability to be agile, their ability to forget about a budget and care about the employee safety, and focus on those items and make sure that those are being attacked. Those are being accomplished by both hand in hand, the risk manager or as well as the facility manager.
Great. And we've got another question. How do I know whether my return to the office plan is truly successful? What's a reasonable expectation?
Yeah, I'm gonna have a similar answer to the last one because the truth of the matter is this. Each company is gonna have their own benchmarks, whether that's returning after Labor Day, I want everybody there. And if one person gets sick, well, we failed, right? That's one benchmark potentially. We wanna be precautionary. We don't wanna hear any of that stuff. So the truth of the matter is, it's about listening and making sure that the employees feel very comfortable with returning. That's first and foremost, because the truth of the matter is this. We want to make sure when they are in the workplace that we can move on to future benchmarks, not only about who's going to get sick, but future benchmarks about fostering the message, about following those protocols, making sure there's ongoing meetings, not just about reentry, but about the overall idea about reshaping the workplace. So what I would truly recommend is to make sure that each company, just like they would do at the beginning of a new year, fiscal year, come up with their own KPIs about how to measure the response and to make sure that they're keeping this in the back of their heads. They're having recurring meetings to discuss this and they're never stopping because this pandemic is an eye-opening wake-up call for everyone that this is to be taken seriously.
All right, another question. It's regarding the voucher program that you mentioned. Is it a good idea to extend that offering to freelancers or independent contractors?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I do want to, and the truth of the matter is it is a little tricky of an answer. As as all of you may understand, as an independent contractor, you must be able to have your own equipment, your own truck, for example, your own uniform. And you are, if an independent contractor takes equipment from an employer, then the employer is at liberty potentially or is liable to then have that independent contractor turn into employee. So this is something I would very, very much throw caution to the wind on. If they're an independent contractor and you want to provide them equipment, there's different ways to do it, but it would not be through a type of a corporate work from home voucher program that you are paying for their equipment.
All right, another question. This is good information, but a lot of my people are in warehouse and production environments, not traditional office space. Any key advice for these situations?
Yeah, we work in the industrial space ourselves as well. And the truth is, we're obviously, very keen to see what we've learned in the past on the office space and try to ensure there are consistent practices moving forward to try to model as much as they can in the warehouse space as well. So to continue to practice 6-foot distance, continue to implement the directional arrows and other signage, continue to implement different dividers as much as possible. So I know there are different types of settings, but the truth of the matter is all of these protocols we've talked in the past All the suggested precautionary measures, such as extra sanitizing stations and wipes and provided masks, is very much uniform, whether it is in the commercial office space, industrial warehouse space, hospitality. I would recommend all of these suggested protocols for all industries.
All right, and one more question. Do you deal much with architects? Based on your experience, are they taking COVID-19 risk issues into account?
Absolutely. So we work very closely with the A&D community in a few different ways ourselves. One is sometimes to work with the A&D that's working with the client to see through their vision and procure the right products to make that vision really pop. So we're very entrenched in the A&D industry. Now, what are they doing during this time? Oh, well, they are thinking loud and thinking a lot about what they need to do to implement these measures. And a lot of what we're discussing today is what they're thinking about as well. But what they have to also think about is the changing times. Again, in the last 10 years or so, the open floor plan has been very, very popular. But now they have to think about some changes in the future about directing new clientele or old clientele alike, about how they may need to, again, not only reconfigure their space, but think about next steps if they're going to grow out of their space, or unfortunately, potentially go to a smaller space. The A&D community is thinking day and night about this. And the unfortunate truth is they're being really impacted as well, as many of their projects, as you can imagine, are being on hold as clients around the world are trying to really figure out what is the next steps? When is everyone going to return? And unfortunately, we're in some unprecedented, uncharted territories. But like us, they are very much thinking through everything, performing research, talking to the siloed experts, and coming up with solutions as well that we're very happy to work with them on as well.
All right, thank you, Jed. We at Acclaimant hope that you found today's webinar insightful and educational. As a reminder, we'll be providing a recorded version of this webinar on our website, and an email will be sent to you with a link to access it. Finally, please take 2 minutes to complete the survey on today's webinar. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.